Hello and welcome everyone to this special webinar on event processing with Kafka. Today we have a special guest with us, Markan Bhatt. He is an enterprise architect as Pfizer's India Private Limited, Pune. He is having more than 15 years of experience in industry. He has specialities like big data technologies like Apache Kafka, Storm, Spark, Hive, Hadoop MR, application programming using Java technologies, Spring Boot, machine learning, and AI. So I'm very sure that audience today will get high benefit out of this webinar. And now I hand over these sessions to Markant. Markant, welcome. And please, I'm handing over this session to you. Please carry on.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone, I'm Markan Bhatt, and today we are going to talk about event processing and how Kafka is used for event processing in industry and why the Kafka is getting very popular in event processing domain. The traditional way of event processing is old, and now Kafka is replacing the whole. It is shifting whole paradigm to a new level and new standards. So, with that introduction, let's start today's session. First of all, let me talk about myself. I have worked in this industry. Vivek has given my introduction of what I'm doing, what all my specialties are. All my life of 15 years in industry, I've always worked on the financial sector. So this sector is the key for all the software development opportunities or the products or whatever is driven, it is driven out of this industry, basically banking and finance sector. And this is where you get most of your jobs, most of your opportunities, most of your high paid salaries are in this section. So why I'm emphasizing this? Because when you are in college, from that only you need to start planning your career, which industry you want to join, what is the reason, what you can get out of it, what are the requirements to enter into that industry, what technologies, if you know, it will be easy for you to enter into that industry. So that being said, I work for Pfizer India Limited. Pfizer is a global Fortune 500 company, one of the Fortune 500, and it is in top 10 Fortune 500 companies. It is the largest company in terms of payments in the world. So if you go for any card or credit card or debit card purchase, most of the time you will see the machines are labeled as it is from ICICI Bank or Axis Bank or HDFC Bank. But if you see the roles and everything, this comes from First Data. So First Data is Pfizer's company now. So Pfizer is basically Pfizer only now. Pfizer has expertise in financial technologies. So in a traditional term, it is called fintech. So it's one of the largest fintech in the world. And previous to Pfizer, I worked for banks like JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, so on and so forth. I consider myself expert in traditional backend technologies like Java, J2EE based applications, Spring Boot, and JMS, a lot of things. Most of the Java stack that I cover. In big data technologies, I work extensively on Kafka, Storm, Spark, Hive, Elasticsearch, Solar, so on and so forth, some graph database. So there are a number of technologies available. But why I'm mentioning these technologies? Because these are the technologies which are being used by the financial technology firms like JP Morgan, Bank of America, even Pfizer, so on and so forth. I have very good experience in solution designing, software architecture, enterprise architectures, so on and so forth. So that's about me. So with this introduction, let me start. Let me give you the overview what all topics we are going to cover. So these are the list of topics that we are going to talk about today, and I'll give you detail what it is. We will not go into much detail of it, but I'll give you enough context and enough information that you should be able to understand what Kafka is, what event processing is and what is the importance of it. Okay. So, first topic, what is an event? So, event is anything that happens which affects your business. It is the simple definition of event. Now, whenever you go online, you select any application, you open a browser, you open a website, or you open an application in your mobile, all those things are considered as event. And all those events are used today to monitor and do and understand what the user is interested in, and similar type of things will be given to you. So let me give you an example. Try searching for certain things on Google, and suddenly you will find that when you open your Facebook in your mobile, you will start getting advertisements for those products, or you will see those type of contents which is related to your search more often in your ads. So how that is possible? You have never searched that thing on Facebook or some other site, but still you get those details, right? So that is the whole idea behind it, whole technology behind that is event processing. So if you see in a traditional event processing system, there are three components. One is event source, which generates the event. If you see here in this picture, in this image, left-hand side is event source. These are the system which generates the events. So for example, you log into a system, it generates an event. You put your username password, it goes to backend, and if there is a failure, you are not able to log in, it sends an event, right? So all those things. Other than that, if you go to hospital, lot of this new medical equipments, they come with inbuilt event processing. So not event processing, event generation. They generate event on a regular basis. There are sensors, like you enter into sensor which is connected to your home, Internet of Things, Alexa, all those things. Those are part of event processing. So those applications generate event. There is a component called event processor. Now, event processor is what? It just collects all the events, gives a platform where your events can land and events can be accumulated. And third component is your consumer. So this consumer listens to those events, not all events, but for whatever events that particular consumer is interested in. It listens to those events, and whenever that event comes, it performs an action. So basically, these three components are there in the event processing paradigm. There are different ways of doing it, and what are those ways? We'll see in the details. So traditionally, you must have been learning in your curriculum what is N-tier application, 2-tier, 3-tier, N-tier, right? So on the left-hand side, you see there are multi-tier application. On the bottom, there is a database, there is a data access layer. On that data access layer, there are multiple business logic layers which runs, and there is a UI layer. So on a high level, if there is N-layer application or a multi-layer application, you can divide that application into basically there's 3 layers. But nowadays, this entire architecture, which is nowadays is called as monolith applications, now it is getting less popular because your applications are loaded by a lot of traffic, a lot of people are using that application, a lot of data is flowing in, a lot of data going out. So it becomes very difficult to manage this type of application in long term. Whenever your application grows bigger, it becomes very difficult. So on the right hand side, if you see, that is microservice architecture. So your UI, if you see here, the UI is talking to an API gateway, which is, again, it can be a microservice itself, or it's a proper API gateway. It connects to those different microservices, and each microservice has its own database, its own different layers. But these microservices are very lightweight, small in size, and very easy to scale. So if you see, for example, the first microservice is used more often. You can spin multiple instances of this microservice one, you can have 10 instances of microservice one, but you can have only one instance of this service because it is used less, second service, third service, so on and so forth. So microservice architecture gives you a great scalability and maintainability of your application. But with that, there are always pros and cons of each approach that you take. Okay. So if you say microservice architecture has its advantages, it has its challenges also. If you see here, if you want to, on the multi-layer application, if you want to communicate between business logic 1 to business logic 2, you can make a direct method call and you will get the response. But here, if two services wants to communicate with each other, there is no direct linkage between these two services. One service can reside on one server, second service can reside on some other server in other domain, in other country also, right? So this is how your microservice architecture is deployed in the production environment. So if your services want to communicate, how they communicate? So there are two options. So here, if you see your services wants to communicate with each other, so you have two options. Either you have REST calls. So REST call is nothing, just REST web services you expose so that those two services can communicate. But with REST, the issue is REST is synchronous. So it's a request response system. You send a request and you wait for the response for it. And that is where it takes time. And in a large system, if there are multiple chaining associated with your business flow, multiple services are involved in the one single flow, it becomes very time consuming and performance will not be that good. So first option is REST, that is this. And second option is event driven. So why event driven is getting popular? Event driven is where if service 1 wants to talk to service 2, they just create an event, push it to an appropriate topic or queue where the other microservice will be listening. That microservice will do it, and once the event is generated, it will move forward. It will not wait for the response. The other microservice will consume that event, perform action, and then give response back to the first service. So I'll give you an example of payment processing, right? So if you see, many times you will be facing that issue that if you are shopping something on your Amazon or somewhere else or online shopping, sometimes you might be facing issue that your payment is not processed or not confirmed. Wait for some time, right? That kind of message you get. And that happens when your payment processing is taking time. So you have taken the order, placed the order, you went to payment. Now payment is waiting for the payment gateway to give a successful response. But your application is not waiting. Your order goes forward. Whenever the payment comes, so after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, if payment is successful, you will receive an email or an alert that your order is successful, payment is successful, and your order is confirmed. But if order fails, they will send you a notification that your order is failed. Please try paying again. So that is what is happening today, and that is how it is taken care. That is how event-driven architecture works. There are, again, I'll say there are certain challenges or certain difficulties in maintaining all these events and the states and so on and so forth, but that is for a bigger discussion. But what I'll say that this is popular. This is what is popular today, and that is where the industry is going forward in the future. So what was the traditional way of doing this eventing? So I would say 5-6 years back, people were using MOMs. So MOM is message oriented middleware. So there are a lot of technologies which are even today popular, like Apache, Cupid, RabbitMQ, IBM MQ, Microsoft's MQ. So these are all GMS based messaging service. And when I'm talking financial industry, most of this technology you will see are closer to Java technologies and some of them closer to .NET. So all those MOM-based messaging or eventing, now the issue with that is it has a centralized control. It is difficult to scale that particular component. So if you are flooded with a lot of events, lot of messages, what you will do? You want to scale, you want to replicate the whole eventing service, but you can't do that because that is a server, there is a setup, and you cannot, that is not elastic like you do something on cloud. If load goes up, you will spin a new instance. That is not possible with this technologies. And with number of events also, when you define a queue, so basically all this MOM-based application, MOM-based event or event processors, these are all queue-based. So basically you need to define a queue for a particular application. And during that you define length also, depth also, that how many messages that queue can contain. If your consumer is not fast enough, your queue will get filled. And if it gets full, your sources which are sending events will start giving you errors. So for them, it will be an error. So these are the all, I would not say drawback, but these are all the constraints or limitations of the current MOM-based event processing systems. So what was why Kafka? So the Kafka is at the rescue for event processing. So initially it was, let us focus on Kafka first. Why Kafka? Because it is reliable. Kafka gives you a guarantee that your message will be delivered. It will be there that you can use that message. It will be distributed. So Kafka is distributed. How it is distributed, I go into detail of it, but it is partitioned also. So why partitioning is important, that also I'll explain in detail. The data is replicated by default. So if your one server is down, your other server will always have a copy of it, and it is automatically taken care of. So one server is down, your data is available in other server, it is automatically taken from the other server without the consumers or producers knowing about it. So that is fault tolerant also. Scalability, Kafka messaging system is horizontally scalable. If you feel that, so initially you design your Kafka cluster with 3 servers. And if you feel that now those 3 servers are not able to handle the load, you can add the 4th server without having any downtime. So you don't have to worry about downtime. You don't have to worry about anything, data, replication. The Kafka system itself takes care of everything, like rebalancing, partitioning, everything is taken care automatically. You don't have to worry about it. Now, when I say durability, that means once you read the message, one of the biggest disadvantage of queue-based MOM event processing systems, that if you read a message once, that message is gone. You cannot read that message again. So once you read that message, you have to keep that message somewhere for audit purpose or for something else. Like in financial technology, you need to keep all your events, all your records, all your transactions for at least 7 years. That is the regulatory requirement, that you have to keep all the transactions for 7 years. And if you see, millions of transactions are taking place on daily basis. I will not say million, I will say billion. It starts with B. So now billions of data getting generated, terabytes of data is generated on daily basis. Now, what you will do, how you will process, where you will keep all those things. So ultimately you have to keep a copy. But with Kafka, that is also automatically taken care. Your message is always persisted. If you want to read message again, you can read it. You can go back. It is written in the disk. So it will be copied somewhere, safe location. You don't have to worry about the durability or storage of it. Performance, Kafka can process multi-billion, multi-million events in a second. That is what I'm talking about, a second. In 1 second, you can, Kafka has published the benchmarks. If you want to say someone would like to go into detail, go to Kafka, Apache Kafka site. There you will find the benchmarks for it, that for 4 KB, three machine cluster, they were able to process 1.2 billion messages in a second. So it's a huge. Right now, when I talk about Fortune 500 companies, these are the biggest employment provider for the software development fraternity. And in India, all this software opportunities, what all software opportunities are available, it is coming from this type of technologies these days. So if you know these technologies, you get really good opportunities in terms of money, technical knowledge, in terms of even growth also, so on and so forth. So if you see, 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies are using it. Top 7 out of top 10 travel companies, 7 of top banks are using it. 8 of top 10 insurance companies in the world are using it. 9 of top 10 telecom companies are using it. Other than that, if you see the list of companies, it is big, like LinkedIn, Microsoft, Netflix, all those companies are using Kafka. So another big reason why we should go with Kafka. Kafka is a very simple process, simple application. If I go into detail how simple Kafka it is, you will feel that even you can do these things very easily. So Kafka is a very simple process, a simple application, and it supports a lot of clients. So it is not that you are locked with one of the technology. Kafka provides connectors with a lot of different programming languages like Java, .NET, Python, even UI technologies like Node.js, so on and so forth. So there is why it is so popular. One of the reason is it provides very good support also. Now, what is Kafka? So Apache Kafka is open source distributed event processing platform, or I will say event streaming platform. And if you say in technical terms, or in a very layman technical terms, it's append log system. So you must be aware of logging systems like Apache or SLF4J, so on and so forth. So all those logging frameworks, they create a log file. Kafka is doing the same thing. Kafka is creating a log file. And in colleges, we are taught that IO is the most expensive process. IO takes the longest time. So reduce your IO. But that is not true. And why it is not true? Because the random access of a file is slow. But if you see sequential access, it is very fast. So that was the principle around which Kafka was built. IO is not expensive if you use it properly. So, as you know, as I shared previously, it was created at LinkedIn, and LinkedIn open sourced it in 2014. So, if you see on a high level what a Kafka cluster looks like, so Kafka cluster consists of one or more brokers, and those broker will have all these messages. So your producer produces the messages, it will be stored on the broker. Consumers will connect to broker and consume messages from the broker. So on a very high level, this is what the architecture. This is how the system looks. And Kafka is written in Scala and Java. So the native language that Kafka support is JMS based or JVM based languages like Scala and Java. So now, before we go into detail of Kafka, how it works, what it does, let us be familiar with some of the terms, what it means. So when we say record, right? Record is nothing but an event or a message that a producer will produce and a consumer will consume. But the thing is, once you produced it reached to Kafka, it is immutable. Immutable means you cannot change any value in that message. You have to consume as it is. As it came, it will go out. So that is what immutable is. So it has certain attributes like it should have a key, it should have some value, and it is immutable. That is the basic definition of a record. Then topic. Kafka has consider it as a queue, but consider it as a queue within a bigger queue. So why? I'll tell you afterwards. So a topic is a stream of record. So for example, if you consider a shopping cart is streaming orders. There is one microservice called cart service. Then second microservice is order service. Third microservice is payment service. So the cart service will, once you say checkout, it will send an event to order service. Order service will check with inventory and everything and try to confirm the order. Once it confirms the order, it sends an event to payment service. Then payment service will do the actual payment and response comes. It will send back an event to the order service and order service will confirm the order. That is how, consider that as a process. So your topic is called orders. These are the example of some of the topics that we can have: orders, payment services, payment, or cart, so on and so forth. So these are the topics, just topics. And what is topic? Topic is made up of multiple partitions. So one topic can have one or more partitions, right? So that is, sometimes it is called segments also, but the traditional, a standard term is partition. And why that partition is important, that we'll cover later on. And a topic is nothing but a set of log files. So if you have 5 partitions, the topic will have topic 1, topic 01, topic 02, topic 03, topic 04, and topic 05. These 5 log files. And this log file will have all the messages associated with it. It will write those messages in those log files. So it is nothing but simple log file. Another thing is consumer and producer. So producer, which will stream the records into the Kafka system. Consumer will consume those records from the Kafka system. And that Kafka, what is Kafka system? Kafka system, the heart of Kafka system is broker. This broker, it is a server where we install our Kafka, and normally it is more than 3. So either it will have 3, 5, that way. So odd numbers basically. That is that many brokers will be there in one Kafka cluster. And very important thing is Zookeeper. So I'm not going to focus much on Zookeeper because in near future, the whole dependence on the Zookeeper will go away. So Kafka will be self-sufficient without needing a Zookeeper. Is nothing but a lightweight service registry, which is outside the Kafka domain. So if you want to run Kafka, you need Zookeeper. But going forward in future 5 or 6 months, or maybe next year, 1 year from now, Zookeeper will not be required for Kafka. So, but Zookeeper, today Zookeeper is required, and I'll give you what I'll let you know what it does. It registers all the available brokers and what all partitions are there on those brokers, all the metadata related to those partitions, the consumer offset, the producer offset, the topic offset, the partition offset, everything is stored in Zookeeper today. So Kafka cluster is totally stateless in terms of its own state. So Kafka does not know anything about its own state. What knows is Zookeeper knows everything. So that is why Zookeeper, sometimes it becomes very difficult, a single point of failure to manage. And That is why Kafka people also started understanding that Zookeeper needs to go. So on a high level, this is how a Kafka cluster looks. You will have one or more brokers. There will be, so see, Zookeeper works on quorum principle. So either you have one Zookeeper, you have three Zookeeper. You cannot have two Zookeeper. So 1, 3, 5, 7, those many Zookeepers you should have. You can have brokers, n number of brokers, but Zookeeper, you need odd numbers, compulsory. So producer can produce to multiple brokers, and how it is taken care. It is totally transparent to producer. Producer does not need to know where I'm supposed to publish this. They just need to know the topic, which topic I want to publish the message. That much only is required for the producer. This is component overview. I don't want to go into detail of it. This is just I give this thing here just for information purpose, that a consumer can have. It is part of only one consumer group. A consumer can be only part of one consumer group. It cannot be part of two consumer groups. But one consumer group, two consumer groups can consume from one topic. So there are a lot of things like this. Someone wants to go into detail of it, how they will be able to understand how these components work, how they are in the system, if you go into detail of this picture itself. So if I go into detail of this, it will take a long time. So let's move on. So first of all, we'll understand topic and partition. Okay. This is one topic. So this slide is one topic, and this one topic has 4 partitions. Okay. Partition 0, 1, 2, 3. All this offset, what I mean by offset is what is your current location? What is your current pointer in the partition or a topic? So all this, I told you previously that all these offsets are stored in Zookeeper. All the metadata, consumer offset, producer offset, or topic offset, all those things are maintained in the Zookeeper. But a topic is a logical grouping. Topic is not physical, but partition is a physical definition of your data. So what do you mean by that? So if you find topic, for that particular topic, you will not have any log file. But if you see a partition, so topic 1, partition 0, you will have a log file. Topic 1, partition 1, you will have a log file. Topic 1, partition 2, you will have a log file. And each log file is nothing but a sequence of messages. So one line will be one message in the partition log file. And the last location, that is what is called offset. So if you see here, the first partition, so partition 0, it is at the offset 11. So 12 is what the new entry will come. Similarly, for partition 1, 8 is the offset, and 9th will be the new entry. And as you know, queue system is first in, first out. So 0 will be read first, then 1, then 2, and then 3. So this is again a queue. Consider it as a queue. And from left to right, it is older to newer. So now, how this topic and partition helps. So in Kafka system, partition is nothing but, you can consider it as a unit of parallelism. So for one topic, you have 5 partitions. That means at a time, your consumers can consume 5 messages from that particular topic. If you have 100 partitions, your consumer can read 100 messages at a time from that topic. So the most important part in Kafka is how to define your topic and how to design your or partition your data. There is a big debate. If you don't do these 2 things well, again, your system will be, your Kafka can process n number of times, or it can process data very fast. But if you don't define your topics and partition your data correctly, it will not work. the way it is expected. So here I am explaining how this replication works and how this partition helps in fault tolerance and so on and so forth. So see here, the first, a client is producing an event. It is writing a record to a topic. Now consider this, it is only one topic. So if you see here, one topic, it has 5 partitions, partition 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now this resides in broker 0, right? There is another broker, Kafka broker 1 and Kafka broker 2. Normally in a production environment, you have multiple brokers. And if your replication factor is 3, that means you have one. So when I say replication factor, means your data will be replicated that many times. So if you say replication factor 3, your data will have 3 copies of it. One original. So if you see here, one client is producing an event, writing a record. That data is going into Kafka broker 0, partition 0. So once this is done, that data is replicated to broker 1 and broker 2, where both the partition zeros.